Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi barakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS Shout Out Show. Happy and blessed Wednesday to you, better known as Hump Day. Hope you're having a good week up to this point. If not, hopefully you'll get it on the back end. The main part is you're just that much closer to the weekend. Um, Want to comment a little bit, not too much actually. Yesterday we had a show, it was a little bit heated, but I think it's important that we get back to stating how we feel in our proper context, our proper voices. I never want to come across as disingenuous to anybody, and I hope that people don't come off as disingenuous to me. Um, I actually had a talk with one of my elders who actually explained to me potentially what it is that has me so frustrated a lot of times. Who actually, I want to say, put it in a space where I can understand it because at my age, in my early 20s, I'm sorry, um, at my age, in my 50s, I have lived long enough to see how a particular way of life was, how it's supposed to be, and how it is now. When you grow up behind your parents, and particularly your grandparents, there's a certain type of nomenclature that they carry. It's a generational nomenclature that they carry. And that generational nomenclature, as well as core values and things like that, have largely to do with manners. Manners. We call it manners. You can call it etiquette. You can call it a whole lot of things. You call it adab. But the not just the possession of these things, but I'm talking about the valuation of having these as tools in terms of how you have successful interchange, how you have societal interaction, engagement. And it hit me as I was being lectured, by the way, that a lot of people have lost and sadly have lost and have transferred that loss on to their children. They've lost manners. The ability to have a particularly effective conversation has been compromised because a lot of people feel like the conversation means that I get to say what I want to say and you listen. The whole engagement protocol of having a conversation is lost because, one, when you're talking about manners and etiquette and adab, when you open your mouth to speak, you can't naturally assume that people want to hear what you have to say. Therefore, you use connective language like, do you have a minute? Might I speak to you? You're asking for permission to engage that person's space, to enter. One of the things I remember early on when I took my shahada and became a Muslim, there was a story of a person visiting Prophet Muhammad's house. And the idea was that unless you are invited into that house, you do not go in that house. Unless you have a clear permission to enter, you do not enter. And I'm laughing because I remember I was going to see a friend of mine and I banged on the door and he didn't come to the door and I banged on the door. And then finally he came and said, why didn't you come to the door? I said, because you didn't tell me to enter the door. You didn't tell me it's okay to come on in. And I looked at that in terms of parallels of how we so willingly invade one another's space. We so willingly have forgotten some of the rules that really give us pacing. They give us pacing, they give us distance, they give us dissonance, they give us an allowable, I want to say, engagement space whereby it's okay to be somebody, be something in an interstitial till you can become that thing. The Nation of Islam had the MGDT, the MG. Oh my gosh, uh, Satana knows what I'm talking about. But it was a training class for young women, and a lot of people thought, on the outside, oh, you trying to make these young women domestic? No. And when I thought about it, when I first heard about it, they were training young women not so much to be good wives, but they were training women to be effective homemakers. And the problem is, a lot of people get stuck on homemakers thinking they're home wives. They're not, they're housewives. They're not housewives. but effectively managing homes. And it was a, they still have it, I believe. But I'm saying that that had so much to do, if you look at the curriculum, it had so much to do with manners. It had so much to do about having a discursive discussion, if you will, about how are you, how can we be together. And I thought about this, and that's today's topic. It's called Whatever Happened to Manners and Cursive Writing. Because just like cursive writing, it just kind of went away. And now everybody's printing. We'll be back. Let's start the show. Preacher Moss, the SOS. Welcome back. If you didn't tune in at the top of the hour, welcome to the Shout Out Show. I'm Preacher Moss. I like to say that I'm the host of this platform. However, I am not the owner of this platform. This is a platform, a community, and the people make the process go round, if you will. The people make the world go round for the SOS. And I want to make sure that I welcome everyone who's coming to the show, whether it's your first time or it's your 400th time. We appreciate you being here every time and being on time. Let me also add, if this is your first time coming to the show, there's some very simple rules. Number one, you are welcome to be a part of our platform. Get in the comment section if you have something to say. I mean, the only comment that's a bad comment is the one that you don't make. You can get in that comment. Let me give you the official shout out. But let me show you and demonstrate to you that we do have a community that is here, by and large, a very faithful community, a very eclectic group. This is a shout out show family. It's almost like TV for like 30 people, but it's a powerful 30 people. And what I will say about the people that I want to introduce to you, the stars in the building, if you will, the shout out show family, what I'm going to introduce to you is something that I really haven't said. I don't think I've said it before. This is probably one of the most polite group of people that you're ever going to experience. They pray for each other. They say hello. They celebrate victories. They celebrate losses. A lot of people don't get that. So in that way, I'm somewhat spoiled because I don't have to work hard to create an atmosphere, if you will. And what I think is important is that the people who come here on the show, they create an atmosphere and it's like it's just there. So literally I can just kind of blend in whatever with what everyone brings. If they have comments or someone's sick or something like that, it's all part of a very cohesive situation, but it's extremely civil. It's extremely civil, and it's very civil because I can look up and down the comment section and I can recollect the things that said. And this is a great group of people in terms of politeness, etiquette, and manners. You know, there's a comedian named T.K. Kirkland, and he always talks about people who lose their minds, and he says the words, "Who raised you?" And it is so appropriate a lot of times when you see things. Who raised you? I don't want to dwell on that. I'd like to quickly get into my shout out show family, and then we want to get into the topic first and foremost. First up, we got Sister Ree. Sister Ree, I'm here to tell you that turkey Salisbury steak was fantastic yesterday. Uh, my blood salt and my blood salt and blood sugar are at an all time high, but it was fantastic. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And it will not make sundown. The rest of it will not make sundown. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sister Christy Santiago is wishing everybody a blessed day, a great day. Thank you, Sister Santiago. We hope everything's going well with you in your travels and your travails and your personal development. We hope that everything is going well. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Next up, My main man, Adam Khan. It's funny because Adam is younger than me. Let me say why alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's funny because Adam is younger than me, but he's an old man. Adam is an old man, and I could tell that Adam was raised in a particular type of household, but things didn't happen. You said yes, ma'am. You said please. You say, may I have another? You deferred to language that allowed you to partake of the bigger things in the family, and I really appreciate that. Adam, coming all the way from Ontario, man. I appreciate you. Thanks so much, little brother. I appreciate you. Next up, Altaf Rashid, official Canadian ambassador to the show. I call him Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down, because he's always on in the queue. You can count on him, and there's also a certain politeness that I always talk about. Altaf, very generous. When people come to a program or show or even a prayer service, you know, one of the things I've always focused on is that you thank the people for coming. I think, and I've just got back into the habit now. When I go to Juma these days, outside of giving people salam, I say, "Man, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to Juma, allowing me to say hello to you. Thank you for coming to Juma. The people who work downstairs, thank you." And I realize I've been missing that. I give the salams, and the salams, of course, is an exercise in manners. To wish somebody peace, mercy, and blessings is a big deal. Sometimes we run through it, but it's a very big deal, and it keeps me humble. And I think that's the other thing about manners. Manners help keep you humble. All right. Next up, my main man, Yusuf Abdul Jalil. Thank you for having this show and being steady for man. Thank you, brother. Brother Yusuf is my crypto partner, and we're still gonna do these NFTs, man. I've learned some things, and you and I have a conversation that's way overdue as artists. But man, I appreciate you coming on the show. It's not a thing that you have to do, but I tell people when you drop into the show, it's a mercy, it's a baraka, it's a blessing, and it's also the way people drop into the show. Like nobody's jumping up and down. No, everybody's patient and they know that they're welcome and they have a place on the show. So, brother Yusuf, thank you so much for coming on the show, beloved. Kareem, what's going on? Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, man. Thank you so much, brother. I'm gonna go a little deep and not too deep because I want people to kind of enjoy the fact that they have manners. So this show is not for those who don't have manners. This show is an appreciation for those who do have manners, who learned when they were a child that children should be seen and not heard for a reason, um, and that we defer to people who have more knowledge than us, and we learn that wisdom. Okay. And I also want to give a shout out to our consultant producer, Sister Satana Whitfield, without whom I'd have my hands all over the place, but she makes this thing a lot better. And I did refer to the MGT, Muslim Girls Training from the NOI. If you ever get a hold of the manual is actually pretty extraordinary, um, because it boasts two things. Number one, that there is a power in womanhood through connection to God, which I really love. So that's number one. But number two is, and I'm not sure who worked this out. Number two was the fact that it premised, if you will, the fact that women have to be leaders, not behind their men. Women have to be leaders for their men, particularly black men, because the advent of black men leading families is a relatively novel thing coming out of slavery, because a lot of people don't remember that marriage between black men and black women, it really doesn't happen until the late 1800s, 1890, stuff like that. So the idea of family has totally been destroyed, and the idea of a black man taking the lead is a difficult one during those times. But this book is really, really interesting because it kind of breaks some stuff down. And for those who don't know, the ultimate aspect of deferral, if you will, is an example of the Nation of Islam because a lot of people don't remember that Elijah Muhammad went to prison for about 5 years, and Sister Claire Muhammad kept that whole thing going. She didn't step into the role like I'm the leader or things like that. She surveyed the situation and she did incredibly accurate forecasting about what roles were going to be for black men and black women moving forward. And she made some very, very strategic decisions and some very, very strategic partnerships with women in the Nation of Islam back in the day. Okay. So, whatever happened to manners and cursive writing? Do you remember cursive writing? Do you remember the paper with the dotted lines on it? The workbooks, if you will, where you had to, if you were writing a C, the C had to be underneath it. And you know what cursive writing represents, brothers and sisters? It represented patience. It represented the fact that you had to use a different level of your brain to write in this form, if you will. Now, many of us endured cursive writing, and we endured it because we didn't know it was going to go away. Just like some of the courses you have, cursive writing went away, just like civics class. Some of you, any of you remember civics class? They gave you government, and then they gave you civics, and then they gave you home ec and things like that. But cursive went away. And the idea that writing and communication would have different, I had no idea back in the day when I was working at cursive writing that at some point in time you can go on your computer, highlight everything you wrote, and find a font that would do the cursive for you. And I say this because it is not just cursive writing was learning how to write in this fancy font. It was the fact that you learned, hear me now, you learned patience and how you presented something. Because in cursive writing, nobody wanted to present sloppy cursive writing. Your first projects where you had to write in cursive, oh, they were probably traumatic. They were dramatic. The jump, if you will, from regular print to cursive writing, it was traumatic, but it was needed. It was needed in the fact that we had to progress at some point in time in terms of how we send our ideas out. I say that cursive writing was almost like the imprint for all these charter schools and these specialty schools back that we have now, immersion schools. That we would take something as a skill. And remember, it wasn't just cursive writing. You got a grade for what? Handwriting. You got a grade for handwriting. And that it was important that whatever you were writing was legible and it was clean. Lord knows, and I'm gonna put it out here. I have some very girly handwriting. I have extremely girly handwriting. It is pretty. It is bouncy. It is robust. I just don't do an M. I do a and the reason why it looks that way is I learned handwriting from my mother. The rules of cursive writing that when you have a capital letter, it cannot connect with the other letter. Remember that? Now hold that thought because the picture gets wavy. Cursive writing had to do about the manner in which you wrote. You think about it today. We have a breakdown in society that literally has to do with manners. Understanding that how I feel is how I feel, but there's a way to feel that way. That I don't have to project things over. And even when I was a kid, I tell this story. I almost got killed at the dinner table. My mother thought long and hard about killing me at the dinner table. It was Thanksgiving. You had people over. And, my mother wanted to say, hey, my baby is praise and all of this. And I'm like, yeah, I do pray. And, they wanted me to kind of show off a little bit because Thanksgiving's being hosted at our house. My Aunt May would normally make the prayer, and people were generally excited for me to make the prayer, not because I was young, but because my Aunt May was really, really long winded. When she started the prayer, it might be Christmas before you got to eat. May Allah be pleased with it. But I knew the proper prayer to give, but I was a comedian in training. The proper prayer to give was to give thanks for the food, to give thanks for our lives, to give thanks for the ability to come together, to have good health, and good health and sound mind. And my mother had instilled that to me. That's manners. But here's comedy. My mother said, "Baby, say grace, bless the table." And I put my little hands in there together. I said, "Lord, good bread, good meat, good Lord, let's eat." Now, the reason I can laugh freely because my mother's not here, but the hand that reached through the plethora of people, uh, all through people without touching them or the food, and grabbed me by my neck and and what my mother said was this: not that I raised you better. She said, I raised you to be better, to do better. And she said, there are people around here that you don't understand. Maybe they're not here next Thanksgiving. So maybe that blessing for Thanksgiving is something that they could take with them. And as a young child, it was a heavy concept. It was a heavy concept. But I understood the fact that my mother had entrusted me with something. That prayer, though I joke about my Aunt May going on and on, Lord, thank you for the air. Lord, thank you for the tree. Lord, thank you for the honey that the bees give. Lord, thank you for the stinger. Lord, thank you for not having them sting me. Lord, and she would go on and on and on and on. But it was manners. A certain gravitas about treating somebody a certain way, whether they deserve it or not. Understanding, and I know I'm not alone. But when my father calls me, I say good morning, sir, before I say pops. Good morning, sir. And then I say pops. I talk to my mom. I say yes, ma'am. I say yes, ma'am, to elderly people that I don't know, to elderly women, to elderly men. I say no, thank you, please, as a part of recognizing people's generosity and that it's an ode to how they grew up. You see, the ultimate manners that you can give is that you affirm for somebody the core values of which they grew up. So that yes, ma'am, that yes, sir. I didn't really realize this. I met an elderly person. They were like whatever, 100 and something years old, and he called me young man, and I called him sir. And when I called him sir, he kind of pepped up. And I felt like people are not calling you sir anymore. And he laughed and we laughed. And then I realized that in 100 years, he had spent a large part of his life being called boy, the N word, jigaboo, all these things. Anything that had to do with degrading him as a man, he had heard all these things. You know, there's a conversation that I have with a lot of brothers about the N word. And they say, well, we making it cool, we claiming it. I'm like, you can't make it cool. You can't claim it. I said, because when you say it to me, I immediately feel a lack of manners. You see, because if you can't call your mom the N word, then you can't call me the N word. Well, that's different. It's not different. If I identify with your mother's core values or your grandmother's core values, I've yet to see some 15-year-old kid go to his grandmother and call her out of her name. You say, why is that? Could it be that we become selective, just like cursive writing? We're going to use it. We're not going to use it. We're going to take it out of the curriculum. We're going to keep it in the curriculum. Could it be like some of the core courses, like geography and things like that, and geology, geometry and things like that? We go through the motions with this stuff. Sometimes we disregard it because we don't think we're going to use it. And I'm not saying that it's a mistake. I'm not being judgmental that way. But what I'm saying is, it does belie the fact that it requires effort, focus, and patience to go through it all. You always heard that. Many of you heard the quote that the world is in a rush to hurry up and get nowhere. And that's what happens when you don't have manners. That's what happens when you don't have manners. No, I remember coming out of the gas station, and there was a lady walking through. I held the little door open for the lady, and the guy was going to let me walk through behind her. I said, "No, come on, brother, go ahead." And he looked at me like, "Yeah." I said, "No, it's okay, man. Manners is applicable to everybody." And in a space whereby sometimes manners is devalued, I think that's probably why I don't watch or engage Instagram as much, because Instagram is a place where manners are disregarded. I'm not saying all of it, but one of the things about manners that I learned is that the story is not about you, meaning that you have to come up out of yourself, to talk about yourself in a group, in the first person, second person, third person. And I've heard this before, uh, yeah, you can't talk to Preacher Moss like that. You see how crazy that sounds? And it's so commonplace that people talk themselves in the third person like they can't talk to you directly. And some of the things I think, I'm not saying I'm 100% correct, but I'm like, some of the things like people can't even have good manners with themselves. They can't engage a conversation of good manners and etiquette with themselves. It's always interesting to go to a religious function, and we hear about having good adab and things like that, but you get out in the parking lot, people trying to kill each other. It's like they didn't hear anything. They're screaming and hollering and flipping each other off. And I'm like, man, we just left a religious function. Sometimes it's Juma. And my point is, if you will, I always have a point. But my point is, where did it go? Where did it go? I laugh about being young and having to steady myself with my older peers, my elders. But what you never hear is that I'm bitter. If you want to know manners, go to a funeral. If you want to know manners, go to a funeral. And you can see the state of the family according to manners. You can tell who was raised how, who, what, where, and where, whose child is whose child. And the way you can figure out is after the funeral, when you go to the repast, if you will, you will literally, hear me, you will literally see how that family lives. By virtue of the fact that when they line up for food, they make sure that the elders don't get in line. The elders sit and people bring them their food. And the people that got in line, they merely got in line to make sure that the elders got their food. Check that out. So look, all I'm going to say before I go, I don't know if we can bring cursive writing back, but good manners can always be brought back. And sometimes we have to be the examples that we want to see. And so I encourage all of us to engage, propagate, and share good manners. All right, everybody. We were taught different than young ones these days. They don't have respect or thought for other people. They may not, but they can. Yeah. Remember he had that. Oh, Yusuf, you gone back, man. You had a collar shirt on the plane. I remember you had to have a collar shirt when you play sports. Like you just couldn't show up to the sporting event. You had to change in the locker room. I remember that. Uh, all right, Adam, let's talk about it. Everything we like to bring back. Let me wrap this up really quickly, brothers and sisters. Expressing manners makes you feel better too. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's very true. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. I want to give a shout out to BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Call 1-888-496-6845 today. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. Or like I said, you can go to the website, BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Make sure you check that out. That also is important, having manners about your finance. So think about that as well. Okay, we also give a shout out to Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Again, that's Bayan Graduate School. You can go to bayanonline.org. Again, that's bayanonline.org to reach out and find out if you maybe want to get that graduate level education regarding Islam, not just Islam, but about how you apply it to the world around you. That's my show for today, brothers and sisters. You've been amazing. I want you to take care of yourself. I'm Preacher Moss. Till I see you tomorrow. You know what tomorrow is? Throwback Thursday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care. Bye-bye now. Hey, everybody, this is your brother, Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your shout-out show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next shout-out show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone.